In the middle of a city that never slept, where every person was moving fast as if time itself was chasing them, Ian lived a life so mechanical that even he forgot when he last felt anything real. Working long hours, avoiding conversations, and convincing himself that he was fine. Until one strange evening when a sudden unexpected blackout caused the entire city to freeze for a few minutes. And in that frozen quietness, he heard a soft voice behind him asking, "Do you think the lights will come back?" It was a girl he had never seen before, Mira, standing with her phone's flashlight barely glowing, her eyes reflecting both fear and curiosity. And in that exact second something inside Ian shifted, like his soul woke up after years. He tried to speak but only nodded, and for the first time in forever, he felt the weight of loneliness leaving his shoulders. People around them were panicking, but the two of them stood oddly calm as if the darkness made them less strangers and more connected. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was warm, real, almost familiar. When the lights suddenly flickered back on, Mira smiled. A smile so gentle it felt like sunlight breaking through winter fog, and said, "Well, at least we survived the apocalypse together." And Ian laughed more freely than he had in years. As people rushed back to their routines, she began walking in the opposite direction, waving casually. "Good night, blackout friend." And he wanted to stop her, ask her name, ask if they'd meet again, ask anything, but his voice betrayed him again. Only after she disappeared into the crowd did he realize how deeply he already missed her, which didn't make sense at all. How can you miss someone you met for 3 minutes in the dark? That night he went home with a mind full of questions he had never asked himself before. Why did the silence feel like a conversation? Why did her smile feel like something he had been searching for without knowing? And why did it hurt to think he might never see her again? As he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of that strange blackout moment, something inside him whispered that this wasn't random at all. It felt like life had paused the entire city just to let him cross paths with someone who wasn't supposed to be a stranger. And even though they didn't know each other's names, both of them felt that tiny, inexplicable pull. The kind that doesn't happen every day, the kind that changes everything. Ian slept that night with a strange calmness but also a deep longing, unaware that fate wasn't done with him yet. Unaware that this one unexpected moment was about to grow into a story he never thought he'd live. A story that would prove that sometimes one day is enough to change an entire life. If love decides to appear. The next day, Ian couldn't stop thinking about Mira, replaying the blackout moment over and over. And when he returned to the same street that evening, hoping against hope to see her again, he found himself noticing details he had never seen before. The warm glow of a tiny cafe, the flicker of neon signs, the quiet rhythm of people walking past. Each step somehow connected to the memory of her smile. He ordered a coffee, sat by the window, and watched as the crowd moved in a blur, every face unfamiliar. Yet he kept looking for hers, as if she alone could anchor the chaos of the city. And then, almost as if the universe had read his thoughts, there she was, standing by the corner, her eyes scanning the street, holding a small book in her hand, seemingly unaware of how perfectly she fit into the scene he had been imagining all day. And when their eyes met, a spark ignited, a silent acknowledgement that neither of them could put into words. She walked over cautiously, her steps tentative but confident. And when she spoke, her voice was softer than he remembered. "I thought I might see you again," and Ian's chest tightened with an unexplainable excitement, his heart racing as he managed to nod, feeling as if every word was heavy with meaning. They started walking together slowly, as if the city had slowed its pace just for them, exchanging small talk at first, laughing nervously, sharing tiny observations about the people passing by, the streetlights, the smell of coffee lingering in the air, and as they moved, they began to share more intimate details. Ian spoke about his love for photography and how he rarely noticed the small things in life. Mira spoke about her fascination with urban architecture and how she often wandered the city streets just to feel alive, and each revelation felt like peeling back layers, revealing hidden parts of themselves, parts they hadn't shown to anyone else, the kind of honesty that builds invisible bridges between hearts. At one point, Mira tripped slightly over a cracked pavement stone, and Ian instinctively caught her hand, holding it a moment longer than necessary, their fingers lingering, warmth spreading through both of them. And when she looked up at him, he saw a blush creeping across her cheeks, and he knew without words that they both felt the same pull, the same quiet magnetism that had begun in the blackout the day before. As night fell, the streets glowing with reflections of neon and lamplight, they found themselves standing near a quiet fountain, neither wanting to break the moment, neither wanting to say goodbye. And in that silence, filled with unspoken emotions, Ian realized that some connections cannot be explained, that some days are meant to change a life forever. And Mira, sensing the same, leaned slightly closer, and for the first time, their hands intertwined naturally, perfectly, as if fate itself had been holding them in a pause until this very moment. The days that followed became a delicate dance between Ian and Mira, an unspoken rhythm that neither of them wanted to disrupt, as if the city itself conspired to keep them together, each encounter feeling both accidental and inevitable. They began meeting at the same cafe without planning, exchanging glances that lingered longer than necessary, conversations that wandered effortlessly from trivial to deeply personal, and every time Mira laughed, Ian felt something stir inside him that he had never experienced before, an ache, a thrill, a longing all at once. One evening, they found themselves wandering along a quiet riverbank, the water reflecting the twinkling city lights, the gentle sound of the current mingling with their soft laughter, and the echo of their footsteps on the cobblestone path. And for the first time, the silence between them wasn't filled with nervous hesitation but a comfortable, intimate understanding that they were exactly where they were meant to be. Mira stopped suddenly, pointing to the reflection of the moon on the water, and whispered almost shyly, "It's beautiful just like tonight feels." And Ian turned to look at her, noticing the way her eyes glimmered with emotion, the subtle curve of her lips, the way her hair caught the faint light, and without thinking he reached out, gently tucking a loose strand behind her ear, their hands brushing, and both feeling the electric charge of that simple touch. They walked a few steps further, sharing stories of their childhood, their dreams, the fears they rarely voiced to anyone, and every revelation seemed to draw them closer, forming a bond that felt both exhilarating and terrifying in its intensity. As the night deepened, a soft drizzle began, but neither moved to take cover, instead letting the rain sprinkle their faces, their clothes dampening, and laughing at the spontaneity of it all, feeling alive in a way that neither had ever felt before. At one point, Mira slipped slightly on the wet stones, and Ian instinctively caught her in his arms, holding her close, their eyes locking, and for the first time, words weren't necessary. Every heartbeat, every breath spoke volumes of attraction, of desire, of a love quietly growing stronger. When he finally set her back on her feet, their faces were inches apart, the world around them fading into a blur of rain, lights, and soft city sounds, and the moment seemed suspended, delicate yet charged, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Mira smiled softly, a mixture of shyness and certainty, and whispered, "I don't want tonight to end." And Ian, feeling the same, could only nod, knowing that some connections defy reason, that some feelings can't be postponed, and that in that quiet, rainy night, beside the glowing city river, two souls had quietly recognized each other, forging the invisible threads of a love story that had only just begun but already felt infinite in its depth and promise. The following weekend, Ian and Mira decided to escape the city chaos and spend the day together at a nearby botanical garden, a place neither had visited before, yet both felt it was the perfect setting for their quietly growing love. As they wandered through rows of vibrant flowers and lush greenery, the sunlight streaming through tall trees, they laughed freely, sharing playful challenges. Who could spot the rarest flower first? Who could imitate the birdsong best? And every small game seemed to weave them closer together, the world around them fading until it was just the two of them. At one point, Mira bent down to examine a delicate blossom, and Ian crouched beside her, their heads almost touching, and he couldn't help but admire the soft concentration in her eyes, the curve of her smile as she whispered the name of the flower, and the subtle warmth of her hand brushing against his, which sent an unexpected thrill through his chest. They found a quiet pond where koi fish swam lazily beneath floating petals, and they sat on a nearby bench, feet dangling over the edge, talking about everything and nothing, discovering shared memories and little quirks they hadn't known about each other, feeling as though the garden itself had created a safe bubble for their hearts to open without fear or judgment. As the day progressed, a gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine, and Mira leaned her head lightly on Ian's shoulder, her hand resting on his arm, an unspoken gesture of comfort and trust, and he felt a warmth spread through him that went far beyond simple attraction. It was as if he had known her all his life, and she him. And now the universe had finally allowed them to meet fully, without interruption, without hesitation. A sudden rain shower began, light at first, turning into a gentle drizzle, and rather than rushing for cover, they laughed and ran along the winding paths, dodging puddles, water dripping from their hair and clothes, their laughter echoing among the trees, their playful shouts and teasing remarks filling the garden with energy, a symphony of two hearts moving in perfect unison. Eventually, they found shelter under a grand willow tree, dripping wet, shivering slightly but smiling, and Ian pulled Mira close, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders, their foreheads touching, breaths mingling, and the intimacy of the moment became undeniable. She whispered softly, "I feel like I could stay here forever with you." And Ian pressed a gentle kiss to her temple, feeling her soft warmth, the delicate rise and fall of her chest. And in that moment, the world outside the garden ceased to exist, leaving only two people and a love that was no longer tentative but fully alive, fully embraced, a love that had grown from a chance blackout, through shared laughter, silent understanding, and now into a deep, undeniable connection that neither of them wanted to end, a love that promised more days like this, more shared adventures, and the kind of intimacy that only comes when two hearts recognize each other as home. As the sun began to set on that unforgettable day, Ian and Mira found themselves back in the heart of the city, walking slowly through streets bathed in golden light, the hum of life around them fading into a soft background as their own world expanded to fill the space between them. They stopped at a small rooftop cafe, one neither had visited before, and from there they could see the skyline ablaze with the last colors of the day, the horizon melting from gold to rose to deep purple, reflecting the warmth and depth of everything they had experienced together. And Ian felt a surge of gratitude and awe at how unexpectedly life had brought Mira into his world, turning ordinary moments into magical memories. They sat side by side, sharing a cup of tea, their knees brushing, hands reaching naturally for each other, eyes locking in a gaze that spoke of years of connection in a single afternoon. And as the wind tousled Myra's hair, Ian reached out to tuck it gently behind her ear, feeling the soft warmth of her skin against his fingers, the simple touch carrying the weight of unspoken promises. Mira laughed quietly at something he said, and the sound resonated through him, echoing in a way that made every worry, every lonely hour of the past seem distant and insignificant. And when she reached over to place her hand on his, he held it firmly, reveling in the tangible proof of a bond that had grown so fast yet felt eternal. They watched as the city lights blinked on, one by one, mirrored in the river below, and Ian realized that for the first time in his life he didn't want to think about tomorrow. He just wanted to stay in this moment, in her presence, absorbing everything about her. The way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the delicate tilt of her head, the quiet strength in her voice, the softness of her laugh, and as the night deepened, a gentle breeze carrying the scents of street flowers and baked bread, Mira turned to him and whispered softly, almost shyly, "I don't ever want this day to end." And without hesitation, Ian leaned in, pressing a tender kiss to her lips, the kind of kiss that spoke of all the emotions they hadn't yet put into words, joy, relief, longing, excitement, and an overwhelming certainty that they had found something rare, something worth cherishing. Forever, they lingered there, wrapped in each other's arms, the city sprawling beneath them, lights shimmering, the soft murmur of life continuing. Yet for them, time had paused, allowing two hearts to fully recognize each other, finally at ease, finally connected, finally home. And as the stars emerged in the deepening sky, Ian and Mira smiled, knowing that this one day had transformed into the beginning of a love story neither would ever forget. A story of chance encounters, small moments, laughter, tenderness, and the quiet realization that when love arrives unexpectedly, it has the power to change everything, to fill the empty spaces, and to make life infinitely more beautiful than they had ever imagined.